we're going to invite our respected Mufti Amjad, who's also the principal of the Darul Uloom Zaytuna, which is based in Bradford Olive Foundation, and is also the Dean and the Head Researcher of this Institute for the Revival of Traditional Islamic Sciences. I'm going to request Mufti Sahib to come forward and give us some advice, inshallah, and conclude today's program with a dua.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulil Anbiya wal Mursaleen amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, where do I start? First of all, the amazing sights that we saw, the miracles literally which took place in front of our eyes, things which we could only dream of or could only imagine, and that was just watching the brothers eat. And then it didn't stop there. There are images that are now etched on my soul that will never be removed, no matter how many tawbas I make. And that was watching my brothers swim in the lake, where things which should be stationary were moving, and things which were moving should have been stationary. We'll put that to one side. Mawlana Ismail Sahib has set me up twice today. One is, he rings me half an hour before and says, you know, forget the 2 minutes, Musab, get 20 minutes ready. And then everything I was going to say, he said before I said it. So anyway, I'm just going to wing it now from now on and see what can happen. For me, I'm just going to share some personal experiences with you. And the personal experiences I can share with you is the first thing that I experienced and I felt as soon as I arrived. And that was to experience the Quran coming alive in front of my eyes. That's the first thing. As soon as I went there, all the stories that I heard, the famous books, Qasas al-Nabiyyin that we studied, that became visually in front of my eyes. And what that does to you, it just kind of refreshes your iman. It just gives you another level of certainty which you didn't have, or refreshes things. It just makes, it reminds you, you know, we're a species that forgets quite quickly. So we know, for example, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam arrived to these lands after leaving Babylon, where polytheism had become rife, where he had been literally burnt or attempted to be burnt in the fire. And when he left those lands, he sought salvation in this blessed land, in this holy land, with his nephew as well, Lut alayhi salatu wasalam. And from Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, we see he is blessed with two sons, Ishaq alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam. We'll come back to the story of Ismail alayhi salam. With Ishaq alayhi salam, he resides there. We then went to the maqams of both him and his blessed wife. And following on from there, we see that Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam comes. And from Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, we see Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. And we see this long lineage of Anbiya, one after the other. And the beauty, and I've seen some comparisons being made with Makkah and Medina. The beauty with Baytul Maqdis is that because you can sense the history there, you can see the history there, you can sense the legacy there. There has been no requirements for renovation or mass improvements or modernization, so to speak. Much of what you see is historically sound. And then following on from there, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, as we know the story, ends up in Egypt, eventually becomes a king, and after some generations, Bani Israel becomes slaves again. And then he takes Musa alayhi salatu wasalam to take his people out of captivity and lead them again back towards Baytul Maqdis. Well, he didn't have the fortune of entering into the blessed lands. Many of the brothers who shared their experience said that, you know, it was a rare opportunity to go. Musa alayhi salatu was so eager to enter those lands. He was so eager to enter those lands that he asked Allah, even if he can become close to those lands. And again we visited the maqam of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. wasn't meant to be. Following on from that, we pick up another family, Dawood alayhi salatu wassalam, who returns back and faces an enemy stronger, an enemy more powerful, an enemy visibly seen to be impossible to overcome. And in there's a lesson for the people of today. And Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam, he conquers and returns. And then his son Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam builds al-Aqsa as we see it. So again we see that link to the Anbiya, that continuous link. Another family, Hannah radiallahu anha, she makes, the wife of Imran, we see this in Surah Al-Imran, she makes a bequest, she makes a statement. She says that, "Oh Allah, whatever I possess in my womb, I give in the path of Allah." She gives birth to a female child. And as we know, this is not usually the practice of women or females to seclude themselves in places of worship, to seclude themselves in the masajids. Well, she had made that oath. So we see something unusual and very rare that's not been seen on the planet, where Maryam alayhi salam resides. And again, most of these we say are most likely where she was. And then Jibreel alayhi salam visits her and breathes into her the soul of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. And Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is then born. From her guardian, or the visits of her guardian, Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam, he sees that this is a place of miracles. He sees that she has winter fruit in summer and summer fruit in winter, and it amazes him, and he asks, "Where do you get this from? I'm here to provide food for you." And she informs him that this comes from Allah, this comes from the unseen. This gives him extra motivation to also call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that even though he had to a certain extent given up on children, he makes and requests from Allah a child, and he is bestowed with Yahya alayhi salam. So these events, these scenarios were there for me to see as I was walking in the masjid area, as I was walking around that area. It became visually clear. And this is what it will do for anyone who goes there. Obviously, it makes benefit to read upon the subject matter before we go, because then you gain more from there. And then, as I touched upon Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, we had opportunity to see and understand how Isa alayhi salatu wasalam has been misunderstood by some and understood correctly by some. So we went to the church of Sepulchre, where supposedly Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was crucified. We saw the hilltop and the blood which is attributed to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. From there's a space around 6 foot long, 2 foot, 3 foot wide, in which again supposedly Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was bathed and shrouded. And then not so far away, there was a small cave in which Isa alayhi salam was placed, and there was a rock placed in front. Now this is all Christian narrative. This is how the Christians perceive him. Again, we were told that the Christians believe at a certain point in Jerusalem is where Isa alayhi salam carried the cross on his back, and he went along this way, and there's a handprint we found on a corner which again is attributed to Isa alayhi salam. You see these with your eyes. You don't have to just imagine it. You don't have to look at tafasir, you don't have to look at books of history. You can go there, experience it, witness it with your own eyes. And then you have another people, the Jewish people, who do not even regard Isa alayhi salam as any being of value. And it's quite amazing to see that around 2.5 billion people have this misunderstanding about this one man, and how we have a separate and a different understanding. That he has been taken up to the heavens, and he will descend nearer the end of time. One of the arguments that's made by the Jewish community, especially with regards to al-Qubbatu Sakhra, which is the peak of the mountain upon which Masjid al Aqsa is built, that this is upon which Ishaq alayhi salatu wasalam was offered to Allah, and is regarded as the Holy of Holies. According to our theology and according to our understanding, it was Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam, and that was on Mount Arafah. So that picks up a story with Ibrahim alayhi salam again, where Ibrahim alayhi salam had two sons. I've explained the long lineage of Anbiya that came from Ishaq alayhi salatu wasalam. But one Nabi came from Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam. And that shows the rank and status of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That for him was a separate area designated to him, Makkah al-Mukarramah, and eventually Masjid Nabawi. And we see Ismail alayhi salam being left there with his mother, and we know the story of running between the two hills, Safa Marwa. And it is Ismail alayhi salam from which the Prophet alayhi salam comes. And let's take our story to the Prophet alayhi salam. I'm conscious of time, and I know you've been listening for a long time. And that is our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When did Isra take place? This is crucial. Its timing is very crucial. Between 616 to 619 Common Era, about 6-7 years into Nabuwah, the Muslims were exiled and boycotted from all of Mecca. They had to stay in a place called Shib Abi Talib, or Wadi Abi Talib, the valley of Abu Talib. They stayed there for 3 years. They were socially boycotted. Nobody could do business with them. Nobody could marry into them. Nobody could marry from them. 3 whole years, the Prophet ﷺ, who had received the word of truth, had to patiently bear. He was clearly rejected by all those within Makkah who had a position of power. After the 3-year period comes the year of sorrow, in which he loses Khadija radiallahu anha, the woman who stood by him through thick and thin, who, as we see many ayats, which when he is addressed the Prophet ﷺ, is referring to his wife who's providing him comfort. But not only that, he loses Abu Talib, the man who used to bring him support outside. So 3 years he has suffered in the valley. He's lost 2 of his main supporters. He is literally giving up on Makkah. So he decides to go to Taif, to call the people of Taif towards Islam. They turn on him. It is arguably the most difficult moment in the Prophet ﷺ's life. Think about it for a second. Think of what situation he's in. 3 years his own people have turned upon him. He has been boycotted. His followers, who he is fearing for, their iman is being tested in the Prophet ﷺ. They are losing everything: business, family, respect, for 3 years. On top of that, he loses the man who stood behind him in the world, and the woman who stood behind him in his home. Following on from that, he is also rejected and refused by Taif. He is in a very difficult place. At that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes him and takes him to Masjid al Aqsa. At that time. Why? Because Masjid al Aqsa is a blessed place. It's a blessed place. So we've heard obviously about the various reasons we should go. I went for selfish reasons, to go to a blessed place. And again, where the story started in Masjid al Aqsa, the story will finish. We know of where Masih al-Dajjal is going to enter. We know where Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is going to descend. We know where Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is going to go. We know where the Masih al-Dajjal is going to be killed. We know where Isa alayhi salam is going to pray behind Imam Mahdi. And if we don't know that, then we should know that. That is all going to happen. And then the story goes full circle, and Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will then be buried next to our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in Masjid Nabawi. All this, as you savor, as you reflect, as you take in, as you walk the streets of Jerusalem. As you sit in that place knowing that your Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam led all the Anbiya in Salah. To be blessed to be there. To have that opportunity there. And I said we've been given the merits of the Salah there. We've been told about the virtues. We've been explained about giving some strength and support to the people there. But what we also need to remember, and I think this is key, is that you go there when you are at a difficult place in your life. Follow the sunnah of your Prophet ﷺ. That was the most difficult period. After that, within a couple of years, hijrah is given to him. He migrates ﷺ. Then the doors of jihad are opened to him. And then after that, you see within a few years, he comes back as a victor in Makkah. That was the start. That was the pinpoint, that particular episode of his life. So for me personally, I went there with lots of baggage. Because I thought if there's any place you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for anything, that is a place to ask for him. That is the place where Anbiya have asked from him. That is the place where Zakaria alayhi salam has made dua and he was granted. That is the place where we saw the miraculous conception of Isa alayhi salam. That is the place that's seen miracles every day, every month, for years on years, with one Nabi after another Nabi. So whether you go to support the Palestinian people, whether you go to take some pictures outside the Golden Dome, whether you go to get the extra reward, the one thing you should go is to go in order to seek salvation for yourself, because that is one place where there is a high chance, a high probability that you ask from him, he will take you out. And I put many requests forward to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and already, alhamdulillah, 2 of the 15 or so requests I made have already been granted, alhamdulillah. So that is the only few words that I will share with you. I think I did my 20 minutes, Maulana Sahib. So I have fulfilled that. And it was also an excellent opportunity to see Maulana Kalim Sahib have some tears in his eyes.